All right, Melissa,
All right.
we are back at it.
Yes.
You know, I missed our time because I was on vacation.
Yeah. How was that?
It was good. It was good. It was, oh my gosh, I have too many kids.
I'm sure that's very apparent when you're stuck in like the minivan for 9 hours straight.
Yes. And Melissa, so when we come back from vacation, I always take the van to go wash. The amount of chips that I vacuum off. I could feed a village in Africa.
Just off of the crumbs.
Yeah. It's shocking. Mm-hmm. It's nasty. Yeah. Well, today another episode of our Common Sense Medicine podcast. And speaking of all the food and crumbs, we're talking about our gut.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's because there's so many things about gut health out there. It's such a buzzword now. And
it is.
Yeah. And all the functional medicine people and alternative medicine people have all these things to sell you about your gut.
But you really, you may be able to simplify that a little bit.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, it's one thing to take a supplement and it works, but they always tell you to do a bunch of things with the supplement. And I want to say the things that they ask you to do before the supplement probably works more than
the actual supplement. Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got my little sheet here today. So a couple of things we'll talk about. What is this gut microbiome, right? Everybody's talking about the microbiome and why is it important? And then exactly what does it do, you know? Because we had a concept of what the gut bacteria did before. It's evolved over the past 10 years. And then we'll talk about things like how do we optimize it? And then maybe some myths about it.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, Melissa, let's start with the gut microbiome. What exactly is this thing?
Yeah, so that is the collection of microbes that live in our gut, which we have microbes all over us, you know, in and on us. But the vast majority live in our gut. So much so that I think I've heard that we're more microbe than we are human cells, just with the combination of everything that lives in and on us. But it's bacteria, it's and it includes viruses and parasites and fungi.
Yeah.
It's like that word, that other microbe. But all these things that live inside of us that are supposed to be there. It's a very symbiotic relationship. Do you remember that from like biology and, you know, 5th grade or whatever? But these organisms do things for us. We do things for them. And, I guess we could go into a little bit more detail about what they do for us.
Yeah. So you're exactly right. I mean, I think the key point of what you said is they're meant to be there. You know, we do have this idea of we have to be clean. And even for the longest time, this germ theory of like,
everything antibacterial.
Sanitize it all, you know. And, you know, remember back in the day, like we would swab our hands and we put it on the little thing for school and you see all this bacteria and you'd be like, gross. Yeah. But actually they're supposed to be there.
Yeah. And they actually help us fight other things. You know, if we start to sterilize our body, we don't have anything else to protect us.
Correct.
That's why, you know, there's opportunistic infections. You know, if we wipe out everything with an antibiotic, then, you know, the yeast will, you know, kind of find a place to flourish. And so there's a very delicate balance. And when we start disrupting it is where we usually have some problems.
Exactly. And I think, you know, so piggyback on that, the function is like, okay, so they do a lot for us. And they're just kind of they're not just like sitting there for a handout, you know, like just taking your stuff, but they're important in digestion. So that's kind of obvious. You know, we talk about a good microbiome is really important on how you absorb certain things. And how you break down certain things. I think they're known to make things called short chain fatty acids, which are really, really important for our nutrition absorption. And to speak on that, I mean, there was this study looking at mice, you know, genetically identical mice. And I call it the fat mouse, skinny mouse study, because what they did was they took the gut microbiome and put it a skinny person's microbiome into a mouse, and it took an obese person's microbiome and put it into another mouse, and they fitted the exact same thing. And like a couple of weeks later or months later, the mice were so different in size. It was shocking. And that might have been one of the beginnings of this matter of like, okay, I mean, calories are important, but it's not the end all be all, because how your gut microbes process certain things affects how much your body actually absorbs and sees.
Yeah, definitely. And, our microbiome, our food is, directly related to what our microbiome consumes and helps us absorb. I think we make like a very small amount of digestive enzymes, it's like 6 or something, and to be able to break down like all the variety of what we take in, most of the digestion doesn't even happen because of us. It's our microbiome that takes care of the majority of it. But there's so many things that we are just now beginning to understand about the role of the microbiome. And you're right, anything from how we absorb nutrients in a way that could affect our weight to a link to inflammation in the body, which then can, be a link to even cardiovascular condition. Like all these things are interconnected, and we're just now realizing that one of the major players could be our gut microbiome.
Yeah. And I think you're right. This is very early stages of studying this. We talk about like food and absorption, inflammation, immunity, so you talk about opportunistic infections, meaning like when our body's microbiomes get wiped out, other people actually move in. And so how our body fights bugs has a lot to do with gut bacteria. And the gut bacteria, I think people don't realize, it's all the way into the mouth. Right? It goes from gut to mouth. It goes to, nose. And so all these things affect it. And even like, gynecological infections, that has a lot to do with how the bacteria and things like that are balanced down there. So in immunity, in autoimmunity, so allergy stuff, we had a couple of studies looking at like how people's diversity, how diverse or how many different types of bacteria they have in their gut, and how likely they are to have eczema, how likely they have allergies to certain things. And there are links, big links on how likely you're going to have autoimmune disease and stuff like that. So all that being said, the gut microbiome isn't just a bunch of freeloaders hanging around. They play a big role, and there's a lot of characteristics and ways we need to take care of them and optimize them so that they can do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
So
what should we do for that?
So let's talk about optimizing. So I think one of the biggest keys, and we'll talk about this, is diversity. It's a buzzword nowadays, right? Everybody wants diversity, but in your gut microbiome, you definitely want diversity.
Yeah. I mean, there have been studies of different populations. I guess one in particular, I guess we can touch on is I think they're called the Hadza tribe in Africa. It's one of the very few remaining hunter-gatherer tribes remaining. And even that is dwindling. But as they study microbiomes from, say, someone in Western culture versus someone who still like forages and gathers, most of their food, there's a vast difference. And when you start analyzing parts of the reason why, a lot of it is the diversity of plants in the diet. This tribe in particular, I think they found that there were up to 90 different varieties of plants in their diet where they've gathered and foraged and different things like that. Whereas, someone on the standard American diet may get like a few grams of fiber from like one source a day, if you're lucky.
That's right.
But you have to be intentional about it. And so there have been studies that have shown that diversity in the diet can help. And they've kind of dwindled that down to if you're getting at least 30 different varieties of plants per week, you can help, really optimize your microbiome. Yeah. There's other things that we'll talk about that goes along with that. That may sound like a lot, but I'm not talking about just different types of fruits and vegetables. I'm talking about anything from, your grains, your beans, your nuts and seeds, even spices count, even coffee counts, you know, all the polyphenols and phytonutrients and things like that can help optimize the microbiome. So it's actually pretty easy to get that if you just kind of pay attention.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And even like speaking on that, even how you prepare the things are different, right? So let's say you like broccoli. Well, raw broccoli and steamed broccoli and stir-fried broccoli, they have different nutrient values. They have different bacteria on them. And so even eating varieties on how you prepare things count toward it too. And I think, bringing back to that tribe that you talked about, Africa, what's amazing about them is they almost have no gut disease.
Yeah.
And that's like, we're talking about IBS, inflammatory bowel disease, colon cancer. I mean, they have such low amounts of that. And I think that's what piques so many people's curiosity, because they're like, you're not washing your food and scrubbing it with the vegetable scrubber.
You don't have like the disinfecting spray that you spray your strawberries or they eat the food. And all inflammatory conditions, that was another thing that they noticed, that like any inflammatory condition was really cut down. And part of that, when we're talking about the microbiome, all of like the nutrient absorption really happens kind of further up in the intestinal tract. By the time the food gets to the colon, where most of our microbiome stays, really there's not much nutrients left. The only thing that survives the rest of the digestive tract is the fiber.
Right.
And so that's what they eat, and that's what they thrive on. So we've got to take in fiber so it can make it all the way down there to them to feed them. So the variety counts, the amount counts. We need at least 25 to 35 grams minimum of fiber per day. Really working your way even beyond that can be helpful. But for most people in the standard American diet, you might get 10 or so. So we're just kind of really on the low end of that.
Yeah. It's so funny. The standard American diet, the acronym is like SAD.
Yeah.
And we're like, our diet is so sad.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I think, that is the key. So, and maybe we'll spend some time on fiber, because there's a lot of fiber supplements and a lot of fiber, bars and fiber one cereals and stuff like that. And a lot of them, I think people don't understand, like, hey, there's soluble fiber, there's insoluble fiber, and you need both. And oftentimes, if you supplement with like a fiber one or a Metamucil, you're actually only getting one. And so to talk about soluble fiber, that's like insoluble fiber, that's like the stringy stuff, like celery, like the stuff when you're eating, you're like, wow, this is really tough. When you're chewing kale, you're like, oh my gosh, this is not. That's the insoluble fiber. And that almost forms like this lattice work, almost like the rebar, I don't know if people know what rebar is, but inside the concrete walls. And the soluble fiber is like the concrete that goes on top of the wall that strengthens it. And when you have both, the gut bacteria is happy and the right gut bacteria is happy. And you're feeding them, they're growing, and that's all awesome. If you're only using one, you usually don't get all the benefits of what fiber can do. Yeah.
And that's where the diversity comes in. You want lots of different kinds to feed, lots of different kinds of bacteria, and the good kind, the kind that will make those short chain fatty acids and things that will contribute to, our immune system and decreased inflammation and all those things. There are microbes that can do the opposite for us, that actually can, be more detrimental for our health. And they usually start to thrive when our good guys aren't being fed. So that's usually when we're lacking fiber, when we're eating the standard American diet. It just gives those other guys the opportunity to kind of take over and then, wreak havoc. And, we start having digestive issues and other inflammatory processes and things like that. But, there's ways to adjust that, and it doesn't take very long to change too. So really, you can see a shift in your microbiome even after one meal. They can take a sample before a meal and after a meal, and there's a shift, so it doesn't take very long to make a change when it's needed.
Yeah. Oh, okay, and I want to add this caveat, because you just said, you're right. If you just start changing your diet a little bit, the gut bacteria actually starts to change with it as well. And it doesn't take long. It's not like anything you have to do for a long, long time. But I would say this, that if you eat a lot of junky food all the time, your stomach might not be very happy with you if you just jump from 0 to full fiber.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there is a gradual process because, yeah, you're right. If you go from like, zero fiber or very minimal to, that 25 to 35 grams overnight, you're probably going to have like some gas and bloating because all those little guys that would help you digest that haven't really like built up their population. If you've been kind of neglecting them, there's probably like not the dominant, ones in there right now. But if you start to increase gradually, a few grams of fiber or adding one fiber food to each meal, just to kind of start getting some extra grams, a few here and there. And then over time, as you build all the way up and you're consistently eating that, you'll be able to tolerate fiber just fine. And then you'll get all the benefits from those good guys too. But then also once those are kind of built up and those are like your dominant, their thriving microbiome, having a bad meal isn't going to like completely revert you back. But at the same time, you're not going to feel that great when you eat a bad meal either. So,
I've heard so many people say that once they've started eating more clean, when they, let's say, all go out and they go to eat fried chicken, they don't feel good. And it's like you said, the bacteria that really processes a lot of that processed food, the Bacteroides family, the ones that aren't exactly good, a good family to have in large amounts in the gut, because they're also down, I mean, you feel it. And usually that's a good thing. That means your body is learning like, hey, stop eating this stuff that I don't know what to do with. And please start eating more vegetables and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing like what they make you crave too. And that's part of the thought too as to why like junk food's so addictive is that it's actually like signals from the microbiome that's like sending, signals to you to like, I need more of this food, so, is what they're saying. And so then like we like have those cravings. Yeah. It's so crazy. But the same goes for the good guys too. If we start really like, eating good, nourishing, fiber-filled foods and, those good bacteria are thriving, we'll get those cravings. We'll crave an apple instead of a honey bun or whatever,
Yes, it's so true. But also, it's so funny. I mean, that just kind of shows you how important having a good gut microbiome and a good diverse gut microbiome is, because it's more than just digestion. It's, just behavior. It is how you feel. And I guess this is a good place to put this in. Gut bacteria also make serotonin. So they actually have a big link in mood and depression and anxiety and things like that. And there's this whole study on the gut-brain connection, how our gut feels affects how our brain feels. And it is something that, again, we've all known, like when let's say you ate too much for Thanksgiving, you feel overstuffed. Your brain is like, whoa, this is horrible, Or if you're having a stomach bug and you're thrown up all over the place, you mentally feel horrible as well. And so there are so many things that kind of encourage us to like, hey, you know what? We should probably take our gut bacteria, like take care of them. Like, right? I had somebody say like they're eating you're either feeding them or they're feeding on you. Yeah,
it's true. And you're either feeding them things that will contribute to your health or things that will contribute to your disease, and a lot of that middleman is the microbiome. And so we have to make sure we're taking care of it.
Yeah. Well, and I think, so moving on then, Melissa, we talked about fruits and vegetables. Like, how would you, like your diet, you eat a lot of fiber. What do you usually eat on a daily basis that is meeting those fiber requirements?
Yeah. I mean, probably in the morning, most mornings right now, I'm like on a toast kick. But it's like a multi-grain toast that has, I don't know what, there's like seeds and everything in it. So that's probably like maybe 5 different varieties right there. Usually some sort of like peanut butter, almond butter, some sort of like nut butter. And then at lunch, it varies, but a lot of times I'm also like on a wrap kick right now too. So there's like,
oh, you're the one with the wraps in the fridge.
yeah. So there's like, and there's different things in it every day, but it's like usually like a whole wheat wrap with different veggies and, a protein and things like that. So it's just kind of like a, also another variety. And then at night, there's usually, some veggies, maybe a side salad, things like that. But it's easier to get the fiber than you realize if you add fiber foods at every meal, you know, and it doesn't take much, but just kind of incorporating it in. And it can be little substitutes like that. Like maybe having the multigrain toast instead of like the white bread or that kind of thing. That's going to give you more variety, definitely a higher fiber count. So
yeah. And I think another piece of the fiber thing is it actually takes away carbohydrates and sugars, so a lot of people who are afraid of high amounts of sugars in their food, fiber filled foods will actually help block some of that. So another plug for fiber. Now, as I think, Melissa, when people are listening to us talk, so now we're shifting to some of these common misunderstood myths. We didn't mention a single probiotic supplement for people to take. And I will give you a little history. I mean, of course, when we're studying the microbiome, we do know that there are some families of bacteria that are better for us. So lactobacillus is usually a good family. Oh my goodness, I've just blanked out on their name. But like we understand that there might be some better families. And so hence, we're Americans. So if one is good.
If we can put it in a pill.
We're going to do it. Yeah, exactly. So, here comes the families of probiotics, and maybe we've had some success in certain cases, like inflammatory bowel disease with VSL type probiotics and stuff like that. But overall, as maybe a treatment group, so probiotics, we have not had the success we thought we would.
Yeah, I remember, even early in our practice years, like if anybody got put on an antibiotic, it was like immediately a probiotic. And that was like on protocol in the hospital. And maybe, I don't know if they still do that or not. It's been a while since I've been in the hospital, but like really what has been found over time is that when you start, the abundance of one or two strains of bacteria, those are the ones that are going to become dominant, but it does cut down on that diversity. And even in the settings of antibiotics, they've found that people who take probiotics along with antibiotics or after, it actually takes longer for their gut microbiome to kind of get back to normal after the antibiotics. So it's usually better just to keep eating that good, diverse diet and, don't even need the probiotic.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And I think that is maybe, looking in hindsight, it almost sounds like, man, we should have seen this coming, because you have, trillions of bacteria, more than the cells in your entire body. You have tens of thousands of different varieties of families of bacteria. And for us to think that we're just going to put one in there, large amounts of one in there, and life will be great, usually doesn't work out like we're supposed to. So that is a common myth. I would say myth number one, don't, instead of paying all this money on probiotics, because some of them get expensive. Some of them are like tens of thousands, hundreds of dollars a month. We would rather you just buy the variety of food.
Yeah, enjoy the food. Same with the prebiotic supplements too. It's like, oh, well, we need to feed our, microbiome, so we need prebiotics, which is like, that's fiber. That's right. No, but it is. It's all those little things that we get from plants, whether it's the, the fiber and the phytonutrients and everything that feeds the microbiome. Those are prebiotics, and we don't have to just isolate one or two prebiotics. Just eat the variety.
There you go. So number one, don't waste your money. The second one, and this is one that actually I have personally seen deal with, is parasites. Right now, of course, there are worms. Don't get me wrong. There are definitely worms and parasites out there that are not good for the body. But again, this is America. So if one is not good, then all of them must be bad, right? And so there is this hunt, probably not so much in mainstream medicine, but in the functional alternative medicine, this big push for you don't need to have, you're just covered with parasites. And unfortunately, the only thing that can fix it is the medicine that I make in my basement. And it doesn't, it's, let's just say it's probably also a waste of time and money.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And maybe in their tests, they're finding some parasites. And I probably should have like looked more into the methods, but really like if someone has a true like parasitic infection with like certain types of worms or things like that, definitely, and you need treatment for that, but that is not like treatment for parasites is not 30 supplements. Like it's not.
Yes.
So if someone's saying you have parasites, here's $200 worth of supplements to treat it, that wouldn't go together really.
Correct.
But you're right, there are some parasites that they may pick up on, but if you have a good healthy microbiome that's doing what it's supposed to do, they're not causing us any harm.
Correct.
And the symptoms that you're reporting, like fatigue, could be coming from like a variety of other things, and it's not likely the culprit.
No, I usually hear because actually my wife went to a functional medicine doctor one time, and she was told she has parasites, and I was like, how do you know? But anyway, they're like, we examined. I'm like, okay, and they did the tensile testing where they like take a supplement, put it on their stomach, and they hold their arm out and they like push on their arm and like, oh, you don't have any, you're not holding strong. Anyway, she did for like 30 of them, and like, okay, well, these two, you're much stronger. And the whole time watching this, I'm like, is this like a magic show? But yeah, so she was supposed to take these two things, but it's interesting. So how they frame it up is, okay, I want you to eat lots of fruits and vegetables, big variety, drink lots of water to make sure that, the foods are processing well. I want you to start exercising or start walking, get plenty of sleep, and let's control the stress. And the only other thing that will fix it is the supplement. And like this supplement. And I was like, I think the other thing
because all those things that you just listed.
Yeah, because people come back and say they feel better.
Oh yeah,
and they'll attribute it to the supplement, but it's probably the other things they're doing.
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. In optimizing our gut microbiome, fiber and the food that we put in is only a small part. All those other things actually do help our microbiome. Exercise, stress management, sleep, all of those things play a major role in what's thriving and what's not. So if one of those pieces is missing, we're not kind of setting up the best environment for it.
Yeah. So so option number 2, instead of spending all your money and time on weird supplements to kill parasites, do the first things first. Right? That's one thing I even do in life period. First things first. First thing that need to come, they need to be taken care of. So variety in food, exercise, sleep, stress, because that all affects gut microbiome. You take care of the microbiome, they'll take care of your gut, and life should be great. The last one, and I don't know if I would say it's a myth, but it's one that needs more data, is leaky gut. That is also commonly mentioned. I've read it in books. I've read it a lot of places. And the idea is that so much inflammation, so much maybe warring amongst the tribes in your gut, that the gut wall becomes permeable. So meaning that, hey, bacteria can creep through now that you didn't used to be able to creep through. Certain toxins can leak through, and then that's what's making you sick. And I will say right now, we don't have any studies credible enough to prove that that is a thing or not a thing. The idea usually, it came from initially inflammatory gut disease. So Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, these are true autoimmune, immune system attacking gut, increasing inflammation, people get really sick. And so of course we just extrapolate a little bit more and say, well, yeah, when you don't feel good. So, but again, their recommendation is always the same. It's like, well, you have leaky gut. You got to exercise, eat better, drink more water, get your sleep, control your stress, and then take this. And usually it's just doing the beginning will lower the inflammation and probably fix that sensation that you're having.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. There's much to add about that.
Yeah. So
it is very trendy.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, the fix is all the things that we need to be doing anyway.
Yeah. So unfortunately, for people that are listening to this pod, they're like, I hope they tell us something crazy. There is nothing crazy.
There's nothing groundbreaking. Now, there are some other things that can also, be harmful potentially to your microbiome. Things like alcohol, potentially, things like processed food, preservatives, like cured foods, things like that, maybe we don't completely understand the balance, but there, has been shown, or at least some thoughts that some of that could cause a little bit of disruption if you're eating those things consistently. There was something about artificial sweeteners too, which I don't know if that was truly proven, but there's
Right.
talk of that as well. So there are things that, we probably shouldn't be consuming much of anyway, that could potentially, harm our microbiome.
Yeah. Well, and I guess I totally forgot to bring this up. Antibiotics. That is one that, if you have a bad sinus infection, it's been going on for, a week and you're still having fever, congestion, teeth pressure, you probably need an antibiotic. If it started on day 1 or it's been 12 hours in, we don't know if it's a virus. Most likely it's a virus, but we do need to be a little careful on how many antibiotics we're taking all the time. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
You're good.
Just
You're
making
good.
sure I'm not needed yet.
Yeah.
Almost, but not yet.
Yeah, we're good. We're running a little on time. So but no, I mean those are things. So even before you come to the doctor, before coming to ask for antibiotics, definitely give the body some time to fight. Let the immune system learn. Because most of the time the body will win and it can fix it. But cutting back on how much antibiotics we use, because antibiotics are kind of like a nuclear bomb. It doesn't discriminate if you're a good guy, a bad guy, it's going to blow everybody up. And sometimes when it messes with the gut bacteria too much, other C. diff, other bacteria can creep in, and then we can be in a lot of trouble. So just a little plug about just be careful how much antibiotics we're using.
Yeah, and then we get antibiotic resistance.
Yeah.
So just be careful. Let your body, have some time to do what it's supposed to do.
Yeah. Well, to summarize everything, because we wrapped this up, number 1, gut microbiome, gut bacteria, it's diverse. We don't know enough about it. They need to be there. And they're probably fine. Not all of them are bad. The second thing is, unfortunately, there is no pill or supplement that seems to do well in general. The best way is to control it with lots of food, different types of food, fruits and vegetables, control the processed food, lots of water, sleep, stress, just essentially the lifestyle, boring, not exciting things, but they seem to work. And if you take care of them, they'll take care of you.
That's right.
Yeah. Anything you want to add, Melissa?
I think that's it. I think everybody can start, with a few things this week, like pay attention to, what you're consuming. If you're lacking in fiber or plants, just start adding those in. You can get a good variety without sacrificing a lot of other things. But, if you are consuming a lot of processed foods, that's one place you can definitely start to decrease and just kind of, replace that with some things that are going to be more beneficial.
Awesome. Yep. Well, for our listeners, thanks for subscribing and following. Our subscribers we've jumped up a lot on our subscribers, so it's exciting. We do have guests probably in the next couple of weeks coming to talk about the devastation of chronic disease like diabetes and also childhood obesity. So tune in for that probably in the next 2 weeks. We're working on the schedule.
All right.
But Melissa, thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks.